I'm ready to call the meeting to order. Yes, can we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Wilson,
Here.
Commissioner Helfrey,
Here.
Commissioner Jailing, Commissioner Hudson,
Here.
Commissioner Coleman,
Here.
Commissioner Ferris, Commissioner Siebert,
Here.
Council Liaison Garitano, and myself. Thank you.
And then next, did everybody have a chance to read the minutes from our last meeting?
Yes.
And if so, can I get a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion to approve the minutes.
Second? All in favor? Anyone? Any opposed?
Yeah.
Do we have any public comments tonight? Okay. And then next to an overview of the 2022 Celebrate Wildwood event.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair and members of the commission, I'm going to do very little talking on this particular item tonight. I'll wait to bore you with the discussion about the expenditures and the budget for next year. I'm going to ask Kristen and Stacy to provide some feedback relative to how the Department of Planning thought the event went, and more importantly, what we've heard from vendors, participants, organizations, and et cetera. As we were talking before the meeting started with Ms. Hudson and Ms. Coleman, we've gotten a lot of feedback, some formal through the survey and et cetera, and other just in telephone calls. So I'm going to invite Kristen up to the podium with your permission, Madam Chair.
Hello, everybody. We do have in your packets a good amount of feedback. There are various emails as well as a spreadsheet of the survey responses that we received. The emails we received pretty much unsolicited from vendors and other people that were there, the band, and I believe there might have been another food vendor, but we reached out to the arts and crafts vendors, the authors, food vendors, service providers, parade participants with a survey to see what they thought. Good feedback, anything we could improve, what they liked about the event and the management of the event. And we really did get great feedback on the event. There are a couple little things. Of course, we could always improve on some things. So we appreciate the different feedback as well. One thing they mentioned was, I guess previously water was provided to the vendors. And we didn't do that this year, but it is noted. There was some problem with the Wi-Fi, the signal. So we were getting feedback on that as well. Stacy and I pretty much walked around to all the vendors there that day and checked in with them. We had a little card with our numbers and the electrician's number. If they needed anything, the electrician was really helpful to the food vendors because they are the ones that really have problems more than anybody with their different smoothie machines and things like that. But it was nice to put faces to the names. And I think it was for them as well, since we've been communicating with them through the whole process. So it was nice to check in with them, see what they were selling or handing out, some of the organizations. Babbler was there with a little owl and a snake. I don't believe the owl was real, but and some of the new businesses in Wildwood, Lucky Dog. They were kind of on the end when you turn the corner over by the city tent, and just really appreciative to be there and have that contact with so many people. So it was, for us, what we received back from everybody, we thought it was great. And for us, honestly, we were scared to death at this because it was a brand new thing for us. I participated last year. Stacy hadn't, but I was just, being told last year what to do. So it was scary for us. We did have a couple hiccups that we won't mention, but I don't think anybody out there knew of our tiny little hiccups, but no, if you gander through the spreadsheet, I really think from our perspective and from most of the vendors and people that were there, that it really was a great event. We had a great amount of volunteer participation from the commission and our staff. And that's another thing we kind of think as far as volunteers on how we could improve that as well for volunteers, doing different tasks and really narrowing down on that. But I think we were really pleased. So we hope you guys were too.
Mhm.
Healthy.
I had a friend who was in from out of town and her whole family came over and she called me and said that they had an absolute blast and they thought it was just fantastic and they stayed all day and night. So I just kudos to you guys. Because I know that the city, you guys really do 100% of the work. We just kind of get to play. And so I'm very grateful for all of you. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Is this the time to open up for any other?
The only thing I wanted to add was that several people passing by, when they would see us in our shirts, they would thank us. And they actually came over to the tent and thanked us. And I thought, I would never do that at something, but how lovely to get that feedback right there. So that was really good to interact with people like that and walk around. So that was it.
So, Madam Chair and members of the commission, obviously, the first item on the agenda is just for us to give you our impressions. The second item is to hear your input so that we can take it down and obviously address it as we go through the next series of meetings into the 2023 event. We do want to note a couple of things. Obviously, organizationally, that can always improve. We heard a couple of comments about the parade. The parade by far was the largest event the largest parade we've ever had at the event, just in terms of numbers. And that's saying it without the Lafayette High School band, which was always a large group of people. So from that perspective, moving back to Schnucks Wildwood Crossing was a great suggestion on the part of the commission, because if we had tried to do that size of a parade at New Community Church, I don't know what we would have come up with. So kudos to you on that, and kudos to the police department. As always, they did a great job assisting the organizers of the parade, us, in getting things squared away and making it safe for everybody. So the parade is something we'll continue to look at. The second thing and the last thing I want to just kind of mention is the advertising. I don't know if you followed Facebook, but the effort that Debbie Ward of Silver Tablet Marketing made for us. She started the campaign, so to speak, at the end of August. And we were just overwhelmed with likes, just the feedback we were getting from that particular campaign and just the creativity she used to kind of market it. And hopefully what I thought was a very professional approach to it. We did get an electronic message board out on Highway 100. we deceptively said, expect delays, celebrate Wildwood. So we did our best, and thanks to the police for that assistance. I think that worked well. And I got today a call from Rob Knoll, who is the owner of Benedetto's on Main, and it was on a project he's doing at his home. And I took the opportunity to just ask how to go for Benedetto's, because obviously we encroach on them. He said it was the best day they've had in 2 years. And he was thrilled. They started out with 10 gallons of sangria, and they ended up making almost 30 gallons of
My
sangria.
God.
So the only other impression I had was we had a much larger crowd at the start of the event, and that crowd stayed through the lunch hour. We usually expect a kind of a lull somewhere between 4 and 6 when most people are going home or getting ready for the evening, the concert. That started a little early this year, and I'm not sure why. May attribute it to just the larger crowd earlier on, or it did get kind of warm and sunny during the afternoon. But other than that, the crowd, Ms. Coleman will maybe mention it when she gets an opportunity, when I close my mouth and shut up. But she had an estimate on the crowd size for the concert. So in conclusion, seems like the businesses in the area did extremely well. And for the first time, at least the Department of Planning and Parks didn't get complaints from the businesses about lack of parking. And so I see that as a positive too. Maybe they're understanding that this is a good thing for all of us. So if there's any questions of Stacy, Chris, or I, or Sergeant Jacqueline, we'd be glad to try to answer them at this time. All right, so we've got questions for you. What do you all think?
Well, first, I'd like to start off by saying thank you to all of the commissioners, the police force, and obviously the city staff for such a great event. I think 2022 was a wonderful celebration, and I've seen several firsthand for the last 6 years. So I think that everybody did a great job and worked together really well. I think the band was very good. They were very engaging with the audience, and I don't know if there were some issues with sound checks or things like that, but I wasn't aware of. But overall, I think the parade was great. I think the flow of the parade worked better this year. And so, I mean, overall, I think it was a really successful event, and thank you for everybody for all your hard work. Anybody else have comments?
Anybody else?
Go ahead. You can go first.
So I'd like to parrot everything that was said. I think mechanically, from a planning standpoint, I think everything was done very, very well. I just noticed one thing, and it's not just said in this year, but it seems to be a trend. And that trend is that we're getting less and less vendors selling things and more service organizations in the booths. There's religious organizations, there's neighborhood organizations, and there seems to be less and less people selling things. Susan and myself noticed that vendors that we purchased things from over the years have never reappeared. Last year we bought a print, said Wildwood. That guy didn't come back. The previous year we bought a cup. That guy didn't come back. The year before that, she bought me a duck call. That guy didn't come back. And so what we've noticed is that even though the number of booths are the same, which I think was 106, which is a good thing, it seems like the mix has changed. And there's less and less vendors and more service organizations. Someone mentioned Babbler, someone mentioned an owl. Those things are good, don't get me wrong. But I think people come to interact with vendors also. And there seems to be less and less of that. And again, I'm not pointing to this year individually, I'm pointing to a trend. And maybe Joe and the team can speak to that. If that's something that we could correct, if it's something that we are satisfied with, maybe we could have some discussion about that.
Well, it's a very good point, and it's a point that I think Stacy, Chris, and I knew about and probably expected. And I think I can speak for them, and obviously I'll let them add or subtract from what I say. But much of what you described is a function of our Farmer Art Festival, the prints, the cups, the duck call. And what we've heard from the artists when we reach out to them and contact them about attending is that they just can't do a one-day event. And we heard that from previous commission members, that artists, just the setup component and what they need to basically sell to make the event profitable and worth their time. So if we want to head back in that direction where we get that variety and that artistic component, we probably have to consider not just a single day event on Saturday. It would either have to be part on Friday or a part on Sunday. Anything you'd all like to add?
So can I respond to that?
Certainly.
So I understand that there is a reluctance to do that because the amount of time and effort that the city has to put forth is considerable. Is there a way to incent the artist financially to bring them back in, maybe waive fees, maybe have other incentives to somehow bring them back in to develop this diversity that we used to enjoy, that we no longer enjoy, which I think added a great deal to the Wildwood Days event.
I concur. The artist always brought a certain a character to the event that obviously we may not see we've not seen over the last couple of years. It's a funny situation from the department's perspective because a lot of what you saw out there in terms of tents, tables and chairs, the stage, the electric, that was all put up days ahead of the event. So we wouldn't pay more for those infrastructure components if we had a 2-day event, because they're there well before the Saturday event, and for the most part don't get picked up till Monday. So we're paying for them regardless if we have a 1-day event, 2-day event, etc. So from that perspective, I think the cost component to the city wouldn't alter dramatically. What I'm being told as part of fiscal year 2023 is most of our fees are too low, and that's inclusive of Celebrate Wildwood. The booths are less than $100. Even when we had the art festival, we were one of the lowest in terms of a fee, about $125. And so from that perspective, a lot of the artists thought that it wasn't a quality show, and we were able to convince them that we're fortunate to be able to charge that low fee, but we expect and we jured a good quality of artists and sculptors and et cetera. So I think we can address it. Unfortunately, to address it, it means a second day. And I think we could get a lot of the artists back. They loved the event. If Gary Cruz was here, who worked with the artists primarily during those years we had this separate art festival, they couldn't believe what you all would provide in terms of just hospitality, cost, and just the assistance we gave them day in and day out while they set up during the event and then when they break down. So something to think about over the course of the next month or so.
So I guess the two things that I would like to say are, number one, to remind people as it gets closer next year, to save some candy for the kids at the end. I couldn't make eye contact at one point because I was, shoot. The other thing is, I was going to answer your perplexion at why possibly people left a little early, other than the weather being a little warmer than they thought. There were two other major things going on here in Wildwood on the same day. St. Alban Row had their parish picnic that was very well attended. And Lafayette High School had their Battle of the Bands. So everybody came out, it looks like, because of the weather. So I know that it's always difficult to find out what everyone else is doing to set a date, but maybe that might help a little bit more next year. But it was, it was really well attended, everything was. The other thing, since you brought up the vendors, I would concur with you that the quality of vendors has changed, or the quantity, but I sure understood it to be budgetary. I mean, I really thought that's kind of what did it for us. And so, and when we did have an artist on the board, one of the things that was a concern was mixing juried artists with non-juried crafters. So, I mean, tag you're it, you have a lot to think about, but a lot of moving pieces. But overall, I just thought it was fantastic. And I thought you guys were fantastic. So I can't say that enough. And you too. So, thank you.
Well, and I can assure you, city is in a strong financial position. Reserves are substantial, but also our revenue sources on a year-to-year basis, they fluctuate, and trends in terms of utility taxes as homes get more energy efficient and people go to solar for electrical power and things along those lines. We're just seeing, we're seeing a decline in certain areas, and we're not seeing new revenue sources being identified. And so the budget this year, and that's just the next item on the agenda, is still just for a single day event. Now, saying that, as I mentioned, a lot of the, what I would call the soft costs for setup and the rental of different things, that's not going to change. But I think Ms. Helfrey also identified an issue that I failed to. It's like when Corey was on the commission, she made it quite clear, you can't have crafters and fine artists. It just doesn't mix. One isn't necessarily dislike the other, but they want to be at a quality event because that's what they want. Their artwork, their sculptures, etc. They want to charge a premium price. I understand. Well,
Any
whatever.
other comments?
And Ms. Coleman, you're our crowd estimator, so
Do that. Am I on? Okay. I didn't actually do that. There was an elderly gentleman standing next to me, and he was the one that kind of estimated in sections. And he says, I estimate 4,000 people. So I just kind of ran with that. But it was packed.
yes, the concert was very, very crowded. With your permission, Madam Chair, Sergeant Jacqueline, any thoughts on that?
No, I think we had it between 4 and 5. And I think the weather had a lot to do with it, both ways, leaving early, getting out of it and then coming back. I want to point out how hard they worked on Friday, Chris and Stacy running around and Joe setting up. That was not an easy day as well. We were out there with them. And the weather was not as good on Friday, but actually they were working all week, and I value our relationship with the city and Parks and Planning because there was also not only those two major events, but there was also Pedal the Cause that came through our city as well. And, just we value the relationship with them because they can call us and ask us for things, and we're very honest, say what we can do and what we can't do. And I look forward to working with them for next year's project as well. So I think it's going to be better every year we do it. And the parade was a half hour shorter from last year, is what I heard. Which
And the
was a
route
huge
was
success.
probably triple the distance. I attribute that to them. Them being the St. Louis County Police Department. Any other thoughts? This is good information because this will end up on a future agenda. So,
One thought you mentioned about doing a survey, and I'm assuming that a survey was with the vendors. Have we considered doing a survey for residents as to what they may like to see at a future Wildwood celebration? If more of the artist is, a main draw, or, so we can get input from the residents within reason as to what they would like to see.
well, the city is conducting a resident survey now, and someone was not as ill-prepared and maybe a little slow on the uptake like me. We probably should have put something in that resident survey about it. I know there is some information relating to parks and trails and et cetera. But maybe when that survey concludes and sometime at the beginning of next year, we could do just a simple survey with Survey Monkey on our website and just see what people thought, or did they think there was enough variety in the vendors and the sellers? And would a 2-day event be better for you or less? And I also think at a meeting not too distant from tonight, we could consider moving the event to the following weekend. It appears the Tour to Wildwood is, which we had last Sunday, which is a major event for us, may not be on that weekend, or we may not participate in the way we did in past years. So there is the option of trying to avoid some of the conflicts. Pedal the Cause, St. Alban Road, Parish's Picnic, the Battle of the Bands, which has always been on that same weekend. We used to run up against that with the barbecue bash.
I do want to say one thing while I was thinking about it. Sky Wars was also going on that weekend out in Warren County, I think, St. Charles County. And it's, fireworks. But the reason I bring it up is they had drones in between the fireworks displays. And so if in the future, drones are an idea again, maybe reaching out to somebody who is in charge of that or that event, because it's a competition, maybe there's somebody that might want to practice or something. Throwing that out there. Thanks.
Thank you. Well, I'd have to get Mr. Cruz back to negotiate with the drone guys, because I thought we had it down to $7,000, not $77,000. Picking on him, and he's not even here to defend himself. Any other thoughts? Well, thank you again. I think I can speak for Stacy, Chris, Sergeant Jacqueline, and I. We appreciated the input over the series of months that we met. And as you know, it's a commitment on your part to be here that first Wednesday of every month. And I feel that you actually give honest feedback, and we appreciate that. Even when we make a mistake, we want to hear about it so we can fix it, make it better. So thank you. And I think I have good news now. I'm going to predict this, but I believe we'll be at the same location next year as well. There is a proposal that's working its way from the concept stages to Planning and Zoning Commission. But my guess is it won't be to the Planning and Zoning Commission until early 2023. And then there's about a year process after that. So looks like we'll be at the same place next year.
Joe, did you want to review the budget process?
Yes, ma'am. Less exciting than what we just talked about, but certainly very, very important. So thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair and members of the commission, as you know, the enabling legislation that authorizes you to oversee this event and the art festival when we did that, also has a requirement that you provide a budget to the city council before October 31st. And so as part of that, the department has always presented you a summary of expenditures at the first meeting after the event. Obviously, the last couple of years, it's been right after the event, but that is just the timing we have to work with. As you can see from the expenditures, we did exceed the $100,000 budget by a small amount, roughly $2,000. That's probably going to grow a little bit more. I think if I were to offer you my best assessment of cost, it's probably going to be somewhere around $109,000 to $110,000. That overture is offset by the revenues generated by the event, which come from sponsorships, the banners out on Taylor Road, Main Street, et cetera, and then just booth fees and et cetera. Primarily, I attribute the overage to two factors. First, and it was a great suggestion, and none of us mentioned it, but I know everybody appreciated, was the lights over Main Street. Yeah, the bistro lighting that we had, which I thought really added kind of a nice character, even during the daytime hours. That was an additional $5,000 that the commission didn't authorize when we did the budget last year at this time, but certainly everybody, including the city staff, really endorsed, because I think it is something nice. And I actually think we're going to do it on a permanent basis at some point in the future, hopefully next year, but if not, 2024. And then the other component that I think all of us individually as residents and citizens of the United States and the St. Louis region is inflation. Almost every vendor that we work with year in and year out raised prices. And some even still had fuel surcharges, et cetera, things like that. And so if you take inflation at the low end of 8 to 10%, I think we could basically say that we saw at least a 5% increase across the board, which would equate to about the other $5,000 that caused us to be over that budgeted amount of $100,000. So I think collectively, I like to believe, and I think that you all exercise good control over the budget that you were provided at the start of 2022. And all of us, the police, city staff, and other participants do it our best to adhere to. So I know the numbers aren't perfect, but I think there's good reason for it. And I think the decisions you made to get us to this point were solid. Stating all of that, this year's budget was presented to our city administrator at an amount of $110,000. Given revenue projections and inflation, the amount that was ultimately included in the budget that'll be presented to city council at the end of this year was $100,000. So tonight, the department would respectfully request an endorsement of that $100,000 number as presented to you for the purposes of the 2023 Celebrate Wildwood event. Thank you.
So let me see if I understand this. So you all put together something to the tune of 110,000, and discussion ensued, and it was decided that that number was too high, and it was brought back down to 100,000. I'm looking at some of the past budgets, and a number of years ago there was one for 113, one for 96. And there was inflation between then and now. Can you tell me why there was a reluctance to increase the budget to 110?
Well, and I fully endorsed the reduction after we talked about revenue projections. Principally, the city of Wildwood is funded almost over 50% by sales tax revenues. And as you know, There was a potential to add a use tax on internet sales, which was not placed on the budget by city council, again endorsed by the department. And sales tax revenues are trending in the opposite direction from an increase. And I believe that's based upon, again, inflation, people spending less, supply chain issues, just not having the available products to purchase. And then still the internet sales seem to be growing, not decreasing in amounts. And we do not collect sales tax on internet sales. So the sales tax component it's not dire. It's just something that our city administrator is well aware of. And from his perspective, he thinks it's best that we be conservative. What I will tell you is that what we've done in past years is each year, fiscal year, about July, August timeframe, we do a mid-year budget adjustment. And in past years, when we started calculating the cost of things that we knew we needed and we saw an increase, we would adjust it mid-year. We thought we were in pretty good shape this year. That's why we didn't do it. So I think there's an opportunity if we see inflation staying steady or at this high rate or increasing, or if we just ultimately you all as commission members decide to do a 2-day event within the confines of the same weekend, then yes, we'll try to adjust it then.
Can I speak to that 2-day event just very briefly?
Sure.
So as you had indicated, Joe, most of these costs are fixed costs. And the variable portion really wasn't quantified. It was spoken about very briefly by you and others. Is it possible to have a contingent budget for a 2-day event and to have both of these options on the table? And if the situation presents itself and there's enough support on council to expand the event to 2 days with full visibility of what that cost might be?
Certainly, what I'll promise the commission members is that I'll discuss this matter with the city administrator, and if authorized, I'm meeting with the Planning and Parks Committee of City Council, 8 members of the 16-member council, on October 18th to present the budget. If the city administrator is agreeable, I will bring that matter up to them and say that there's a potential that we'd like to go to a 2-day event to broaden the appeal for certain vendors and sellers and et cetera. We believe the increase in cost would be this, and see what they basically would accept or not accept. I will add one more thing. It's clear from the mayor and city council on down, if Mr. Garitano was here, he would, I think, echo this, is that the revenue stream that this event produces needs to be increased as well. And that's been echoed to me or spoken to me on many occasions. So we will be bringing to you probably early next year, probably the January meeting after the holidays, what we would like to increase the fees to for all of the components. And the goal is to increase that roughly $13,000 number, and there's still some revenues coming in. So basically, I'm being told if we generate $15,000 in revenue next year, we should shoot for 30,000, and that's my goal. And you'll have to be part of that as I present you the option. I should say, pardon me, Stacy, Kristen, and I present you those options. My apologies to them.
Thank you.
So I just have a question, and then I'm going to make a motion that we approve the city's budget with the caveat that Mr. Runich said that he would present to the Department of Planning and Parks the potential to possibly do a second day. Did I get all that right?
Yep.
Okay. So my question was, how much do we need to raise, not need to, how much can we raise the booth fees and such to be competitive? Are we grossly undercharging for those?
Well, let maybe Christine, I think you've talked to some and
And the second part of that question would be, is the price different for a juried art as opposed to a crafter? Okay, go.
I can't completely answer that question. Melanie, our assistant director, did check with, I think it was Baldwin Days, Manchester's, and was there somebody else? It was a couple of the different local things. And Baldwin Days, I know, is multiple day event. Yeah. And I can't tell you the numbers. I don't have a paper in front of me, but their booth fees were more. So the food vendors were more. I almost feel like it was no. And they also charge for the activities. So the arts and crafts, I'm not sure about the juried art. Arts and crafts and also the food vendors did have higher booth fees. So we know that. And also they do charge, and some of those, they have all the rides and they charge for those, and you have to buy the tickets for the rides. So that generates another thing that was mentioned, was the beer tent. So Pond Athletic right now does the beer tent, beer and wine tent, and they keep those profits. Is there a possibility of the city, that was just suggested, the city handling a beer tent and then keeping those revenues? So those were a few things. Possibly like, or maybe doing a bracelet for the kids to enter into the kids zone, things like that. So those are a few things.
Thank you.
very good question. So at our next meeting, November, we'll see if we can put that information that Melanie and Chris just recited into a chart for you. So you can see what, try to compare apples to apples if relative to Baldwin Days, the Manchester Homecoming. I think the pair has an event as well, and then there's Eureka Days. So we'll see where we fall in relative to all those surrounding communities.
Okay, so do we have a motion to approve the proposed budget?
I made one motion.
Okay. We have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Against?
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And like I say, we'll work on getting you more information about revenues that we may be able to generate. And then I'll let you know in November, or if things are going to, if I'm able to present this at the committee level on October 18th, I'll let you know that in case you want to view the meeting on Zoom and just see how it goes, the discussion. Thank you very much. $100,000 is a lot of money. I'll never say it isn't, but as I've told Mr. Cross, our city administrator, by the time you take the stage, the electric, the rental of the tents, the rentals of tables and chairs, it's a lot of money just to get those things in place so people have somewhere to sit, the band has something to play on, et cetera, et cetera. So thank you.
Next on the agenda is the discussion of the memorial program for the event, and we're not ready for any action on that. Is that correct?
No, ma'am, with our apologies between the event itself and then having toured to Wildwood last Sunday, we just really didn't have much time to kind of focus our attention on this. So we'll attempt to have something for you in a version that you can review for the November meeting. Thank you.
Okay, and our next meeting is Wednesday, November 2nd at 6 in person here. Right. All right, and a motion for adjournment. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, all right. Thank you, everyone.
You're welcome. We appreciate it. Thank you, guys.